In this third lesson on articulation and expression, we're going to deal with a subject called dynamics. Dynamics is basically about how loud or how soft you play a part in music. Dynamics give life to music because music needs to breathe. And part of the breathing of music is it involves volume, but it also involves silence, actual silence. And these are called rests in music, where the music literally rests. Either one instrument or all instruments rest and then start playing again. So we're going to be dealing with how to put dynamics into your music. And I'm going to be talking about some really old techniques that are no longer used, and I haven't heard other teachers talk about these things at all. So this may be the first time you'll be hearing about certain techniques that are employed in playing music. Okay, so let's get to it. All right, the first technique we're going to talk about here is a swell. A swell, basically in music, is a change in volume from quieter to louder. All right, so how you do this is you turn your volume all the way off, wrap your little finger around the knob like this, reach up and pluck a string like the third string and a fret, the seventh fret, pluck the string and then bring your finger up, roll the volume up like that. And that's it. Now in a Stratocaster, your volume control is really close to the string, so this is really easy. Again, at the seventh fret on the third string, just like that. That's it, right? Okay. Gibson guitars pose a little bit more challenge. Les Paul, you have your neck pickup, it's pretty close. The bridge pickup, yeah, you can hit these strings okay, but when you go to the lower strings, it's more difficult. And if you're talking an ES 335 style guitar, these things are even further away. So it's difficult, but still possible. You just tend to do it on the neck pickup more than on the bridge pickup. Seventh fret, third string. And continuing down. So it's very possible. Plus you can also just hammer on the strings. And that makes it possible too. So that's Gibson's in general. Possible, but a little more challenging than Fender's. All right, we have three examples here of swell technique being employed. The first example is pretty straightforward. You've already done that previously on three different guitars, no less. Seventh fret, third string, you just pluck the note and swell. Now, the swell is indicated by that thing that looks like a less than mark, and that's called a crescendo. That goes from lower volume to higher volume. That's why the lines get further apart. That's showing that it's increasing in volume. Now, as indicating a swell, it goes from nothing to wide open, usually, or thereabouts. You can put a little vibrato on there if you want, okay? So that's the essence of just a swell and how it's notated in music. The second example is basically, it's a bend, and a swell as you bend the string. So you pluck the string and swell up, and bend, swell as you bend. Right? And you can put a little vibrato on the end. Ooh, got some noise there. And that is basically one way to do it. Now, you can delay the bend as you swell. And a third option is do an invisible bend. Bend the string up to note pitch and then swell, and then let the bend release. Like that. It creates a cool kind of moany, plaintive kind of sound, right? It's pretty cool. The third example shows that you're swelling on every note you play. So quite literally. Okay. And so it takes a bit of work to get you to be able to do this properly. Okay, so you just pluck, swell. And if you don't get it back to 0 quite, that's all right too. Sometimes you don't want to do that. And the faster you're doing the lick, the less likely it is you're going to get back to 0. But the effect will still be just as, just as good. All right? So what you want to do now is pause the video, go back through these 3 examples if you need to review them, and then practice them. Pure and simple, just practice them. And then practice swelling on every note, not just this lick here, but just pick a lick or play a scale like a pentatonic minor scale, whatever it takes, right? To get yourself learning to do swells really well. Make sure that your volume knob isn't crackly too. This will really give your volume knob a workout. So you want that to be in really good shape. So you might need to replace it if it's crackly and just won't stop crackling. That usually means it's wearing out. Okay, so you want to take care of that. Then your swells will be beautiful and happy. Okay, then after you've practiced this a while, go ahead and restart the video and we'll keep going. All right, the next thing I want to address is a thing called silence. All right, in conversation, we take pauses, even in the middle of sentences, not just at the end of a sentence. And this is how we actually operate. In part, we do it for effect. In part, we do it because we're gathering our thoughts. And in part, we do it because we actually need to take a breath before continuing. All right? Now, when you add these kinds of elements into your solos, it becomes more conversational because you're speaking now in phrases. This is a critical element to having more conversational sounding solos that actually sound like they're speaking, talking. Part of talking through your music is to mimic human speech patterns. All right? So let's go to this next example and I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. What we have here is what would be considered a typical run played over a C minor chord during a solo. So I'm going to play it. I'm going to count it out. I'm going to play it a little slow, but I'm going to count it out. Here we go. 1, let's see, I've got to learn to count too. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, is this a good phrase? Sure. It accomplishes the function. It's a flurry of notes in a descending run, and it'd sound pretty good overall. But it also sounds kind of typical. And that's the problem. And that's what we're here to discuss, how to overcome what may be a typical run. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and go over this and learn to play this run. Okay? Before moving on. Learn to play it, put it in time, put it to a metronome, get it down, and play it well before moving on. Okay? Then, when you're ready for the next bit, press play and we'll get to it. All right, now we're going to take the lick we just did, the run we just did, and we're going to modify it by adding silence, rests, right? And you'll notice too, we've altered the run a bit too. And that's important because you don't want to just not play certain notes and pick it up where it leaves off and then add some more silence and then pick it up where it leads off. It doesn't necessarily make it sound as good. So what we've done is we modified the specifics of what's played, but preserved the thematic element and the thematic idea of what was played. All right, so here is the new altered lick. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? So it's not the same, it's different. And that's the idea. We're putting a little bit more phrasing elements in by adding those instances of silence, adding the rests. All right, now I'll play them back to back and I won't count them out. I'll just play them back to back. Here's the first original idea. Here's the new one. So hearing them back to back, you can hear the differences, but you can hear the similarities as well. And that's the whole point. By altering the original run, we're preserving similarities, but we're altering the specifics of what's played. It's kind of like when you're explaining something and somebody doesn't understand it. What do? You explain it a little bit differently the next time in hopes that they will understand it. Sometimes we'll say something and then we'll repeat the exact thing we said, but with different words. It tends to help bring more clarity sometimes. And that's sort of what's going on here. Instead of saying it and then restating it, what we're doing is we're just changing one of the ways we're able to say this, all right? So what you want to do here is pause the video and rewind and listen to the back-to-back part at the very least to hear the differences. Learn this new version. As you learn the original run, learn this new version of the run. Then turn off the video and play around with it. Using this as the basis of what's possible, take the original run, which you learned to play, and modify it how you think it might sound good. But remember to preserve the thematic idea. It has to have similarities with the original run, okay? So spend a few minutes doing this. It's a lot of fun to tweak licks and to do different things to them. In the process, you're actually adding to your own lick library and putting new licks together, okay? So after you've done this for a little while, go ahead and restart the video and we'll keep going. What I want to address now is true dynamics. And what I mean by true dynamics is deliberate volume changes in music. And these are usually repeatable. So when you play a given section every night, it's always at the same volume. I'm going to use piano music as the example here because a lot of you have taken piano lessons, so you're going to understand this really quickly as I remind you. Those of you who haven't taken lessons of any instrument before and don't understand this, that's okay. It's really very easy to understand, and I'll break it down real quick here. Now, when you play through a passage on the piano, there are these letters between the treble and bass clefs that tell you how loud or how soft to play a given part. Now, these are the dynamic directive symbols that are used to help you understand just how loud or how soft to play a piece of music. So I have two of them here in this diagram. In the first measure, you'll notice between the notation staff and the tablature staff, MP. Well, that stands for mezzo piano. Now, mezzo piano simply means just a little quieter than medium volume, just a touch. So on the guitar, what that means is we're going to assign it a value on the volume control of about 4, just a little less than halfway. So those first two measures will be played at the volume of 4 on your guitar. Now the third measure, you'll notice there's an F, and that F stands for forte. Forte means loud. Not yelling, not screaming. Those are two different designations. This is just loud in the way of, say, emphasis. Like in a conversation, when you want to emphasize something, you're going to raise your voice a little bit. It's a discernible difference in volume, and it usually gets people's attention. And that's the idea, okay? So we're going to assign that value on the guitar volume knob to about 8, okay? So what I want to do first is I want to play through this without any dynamics whatsoever. 3, 4. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply dynamics. I'll have my volume at about 4 for the first two measures, and then about 8 for the final measure. All right, here we go. 3, 4. All right, true dynamics. That's what it's all about. Listen to the last example. That's where the dynamics are actually applied, and hear the differences. Okay? Now, in corporate America, they hire people who teach their department heads public speaking, how to speak in public. And these sessions are designed to help them learn to retain the attention of their audience. And what do you think they teach them? They teach them to use dynamics and to be more animated in their gestures, right? If they teach these techniques to their department heads so that when they're in meetings and they're trying to sell a product or convince people to get on board to invest in their company, they have to do it in such a way as that it generates excitement and retains interest. And they do that by teaching these guys how to change the volume of their speech, to talk quietly when they're intimating a secret, to speak louder, to intimate an emphatic point, to make that point clear, and everywhere in between. They don't stay at one pitch or volume very long. They're up and down, generating that excitement, retaining audience engagement. So you, as a musician, can do the same thing by applying dynamics as we're teaching in this series. You will be standing out from other bands. The other bands, their guitar players play all their solos wide open. Well, you can do that too on some songs, But on other songs, make sure that you start to work these dynamic elements in, and people will start taking notice and they'll go, what's going on here? Something's different. They're not assaulting my ears with a 100 decibel solo. They're going to listen. And if your stuff is really good, they're going to listen even with more intent. And that's the whole idea, right? Okay, so pause the video, practice using dynamics. Do it on solos you already know how to play. This way you're familiar with stuff. Now you just need to start applying these concepts, okay? Then, when you're ready to continue, press play and we'll keep going. In this segment, I'm going to talk about something that's really old school. When I was young, I learned this from older players. And it's not taught anymore. I haven't found any teacher that teaches this technique at all, anywhere. So I really want to bring this out because this is a really cool technique that really allows you to bring out a lot of very interesting dynamics. And it's all through how you manipulate your pick. Okay? So let's just get right to it and you'll understand as we go. All right, so what we're talking about here is varying the pick attack from a light touch all the way up to a more aggressive touch. Now, what is the unique feature about this is we're actually bringing our volume down to around 8 on the guitar. We want more dynamic control. Now, most guitar players play with some distortion and sustain that is on their amplifier, not so much on their pedals, using their master and preamp gain to create that effect. Now, if you do it with a pedal, turn off your pedal. And basically, the object is, with your volume down a little bit, you're going to be able to dig into your strings a little more. And when you dig in more, hard onto your strings, you're more able to express the aggression involved because it's not lost in all that distortion and sustain. You actually now can hear it with a slightly cleaner sound. So you have to find that breaking point where just before the sustain and the distortion take over and remove some of the dynamic elements. So you can express anger and aggression and these kinds of frustrations and things like this. Now, the emotional effect is really amazing because the sound of the notes is affected because of your pick attack. Not so much the volume, which it will change just a little bit, but it is the effect of that it has on the sound of what you're doing. So let me demonstrate a little bit. Okay, so we're in, say, B minor. What the heck, right? So you're just going to play normal, right? And now, if you really dig into it, and then back to normal. Aggressive. Normal. Aggressive. So you see that you can go from normal to aggressive and it changes the sound. Now, another thing you can do is change pickups, right? So, for example, because there's no written material, by the way, if you're looking for it frantically, there isn't any. We're going to start here on the neck pickup, and then we're going to flip over to the lead pickup, okay? Now, I've got my tone turned down a little bit because Telecasters tend to be a bit strident sometimes, so I round it off a little bit, but you can hear the difference there. from there. Okay, so I'm going to start here playing pretty normal stuff, and then I'm going to switch over for the aggressive thing, so it even more further emphasizes aggression. And then back to the normal. Now you can stay on one pickup and do all that aggression, right? And then bring your volume down. So you have more control over the soft and quieter passages as well. They become more winsome, sad, or pleading, even contemplative when you lighten up the pick attack and do the exact opposite. You're playing normal, quieter. Normal. Quiet. Normal. Aggressive. Normal. Quiet. So you can see there's a lot of changes going on here. And again, you can change pickups too. And even on the lead pickup, you can play quiet. And aggressive. Quiet. So you have a lot of dynamic potential, and you're not even up to 10 yet. You've got all this volume available just in how you approach attacking the strings. And that's the whole idea behind this idea of turning your volume down a little bit and using aggressive approach to play louder, and then lightening up to play softer. So you have your regular, you have aggressive, you have your plaintive, right? So you've got all that just by your touch. And I haven't touched the volume at all, as you see. It's all here in my hand. Now, when you have the volume wide open, that distortion and sustain is going to remove some of the dynamics because your sound is compressing. And when you compress your sound, you, by virtue of compression, remove some of the dynamics. It literally destroys dynamics. And we don't want that. So that's why you turn your guitar volume down just to 8. That's it. And you can do it even more. You can turn it down even more. I got it around 5 here. Change pickups. The aggressive. You know, it gets a little louder, you know, and then the quieter gets even a little more quiet. So depending on where you put your volume control, you can have a lot of very interesting stuff going on. Remember what I talked about, how people who train public speakers, they encourage dynamic changes to retain audience attention. This is what we're talking about here. This is another approach, very old school. I don't see it applied much. I don't have any, I've run across no teachers who teach this stuff. So I'm teaching it to you because I think this is important stuff to know and to understand and bring into your playing, particularly if you're a blues player. This is gold. This is the stuff you want so that you can further increase the expressive nature of your solos. All right? So we're talking about intensity. Intensity isn't necessarily volume changes. It's your aggression or lack thereof, how lightly or how heavily you attack your strings. Now, yes, you may have a little more string breakage as a result, but think of the benefits of understanding this technique of lower volume, intensity based on how you attack the strings, from quiet to medium to an attack. Back to quiet. That gives you a lot of territory to cover. That's the most expressive you can be, right? And you hear the differences in volume right there. And I'm on 8, right? And then you change pickups. You can do all kinds of cool stuff, all right? So pause the video, play around with this stuff for a while. And I don't mean just a couple of minutes. Walk away from this video for a while and get into this whole idea of turning your volume down to around 8 and playing solos and applying this technique. And then when you go into rehearsal with your band and play that tune, get the reaction. You'll be floored at the reaction. All right? So there you go. When you're ready to continue, we'll wrap it up. All right. So this lesson has been about dynamics and the various ways you can employ them and bring them into your normal daily playing. It's important to do that with new techniques. Find places to insert them where they actually benefit the music so that you don't have to come back and relearn stuff, right? Which is always a drag. Dynamics is important because in our personal lives, we have dynamics at play all the time, especially in our conversations. We talk softly when we want to be intimate. We talk in moderate tones when we're just having a normal conversation. We raise our voices to emphasize something we want people to understand is important. We yell things when we get angry or excited, and sometimes we scream just for pure joy, or we're just frustrated. I mean, all of these emotions come into play, and you can express them all through the music by the application of dynamics. That's articulation and expression, right? The articulation is how you play. The expression is how it sounds. All right? So, take some time, work these ideas out. And when you're ready for the next lesson, we certainly will be there waiting for you. All right? See you then. Hey, thanks for watching. If you would like to continue this series, please go over to Patreon, Outsmart Your Guitar, and sign up there at the Backstage Pass level. You will have access to further lessons in this series, and as the Backstage Pass infers, you'll have total access to everything else I offer over on Patreon. My Patreon channel has a lot more material than is featured here on YouTube, so you'll have the added benefit as a Backstage Pass patron to all of that material as well. Otherwise, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll be subscribed. It's free. If you hit the notification bell, you'll also be informed when new content is posted, which is about once a week. I want to thank you for coming and watching my stuff. I hope you're learning a lot because it's my intention that you learn, play, and grow to become the guitar player you desire to be, to play the music you love. And that's our goal, is to help you to be able to do just that. Okay? So, thanks again for your time. We'll see you soon.